Hi everyone, this is Sufia, and it is Monday, and I would like to report that we have officially started our road trip. I've mentioned in past videos that we're going to be quitting our jobs and moving across the country, and so we have done that. So I'm actually making this video from Mel's parents' house, and we are on our way on kind of a roundabout road trip on our way to New Mexico. So, anyway, just wanted to share that exciting news. But so this week is week 61, and this week we're talking about labels and language, and I think kind of focusing on the term queer and what that means to us. So, I just want to start by talking about how I identify and what language and labels I use for myself. So, I do use the word queer. That is something that feels good to me and accurate to me. I, in the past, used bi because that is what I understood at a young age in elementary school and high school that was all that was available to me, I guess is what I want to say. So probably when I got to college is when I started reading queer theory and meeting other folks who identified as queer and kind of understanding that queer could be more of an umbrella term if that's what one chose to use it as. And so for me it does make sense because the binary has never made sense to me, the gender binary has never made sense to me, and I don't like the term pansexual for myself, and I can't tell you exactly why. It's not a super examined thing, it's just not something that feels really home. And I guess maybe if I have to explain it, it's that I don't really feel like I like everybody. It's just that I don't want to put who I like in a box. Maybe that makes more sense. So anyway, and I know something that I've really worked with is talking about the term queer with my mom, who is from a previous generation when queer was a really bad word, and she grew up in a really small town in southern Louisiana, and only heard that term in hushed voices, and it wasn't something that you wore proudly. And for me to use it, I just realized I don't think she's ever actually, I don't know if she's ever actually used that to talk about me. I think she just sort of talks about me and my partner and kind of uses other words to describe who we are without putting a label on us. So that's an interesting part of this whole conversation about language and labels. I think being able to use language that's comfortable for you without having to put a term on it. So anyway, a roundabout way to say that I identify as queer. My partner as well identifies as queer and has, they identified as a lesbian some years back, but then when they came out as genderqueer, also started identifying as queer. So that's where we are with that. That's how we identify. Language is something that's actually really important to me. I don't personally have a huge attachment to labels for the sake of having labels, but because of other things in my life, my ethnic identity, my religious backgrounds, with my parents being very different, and all these different other boxes that have existed in my life, language and understanding these labels has been really important in my understanding of myself. And so while I don't personally have a huge attachment to labels because I feel like, I am this lesbian person or I am this queer person and this is how I feel, I do recognize the power in labels. And so I do stand behind certain labels because of that. So what I mean is, for me, identifying as queer is a way to create visibility for myself. Identifying as queer while I look like a very feminine, straight person is not something that is like, oh, I have to stand out and be different and show myself. It's a way of saying, a way of reinterpreting social norms and a way of reinterpreting what what queer can look like and what people can look like and relationships can look like. And it's also been a way for me to find community, and I think that that's really, really important. And so labels are important to me because I want to kind of redefine words, and I want to create space within our heteronormative society for normal to be something else. And so I really believe in the power of labels, and when we're using them ourselves, when I, as a person who identifies as queer, use that term, that's really powerful. And so at the same time, I recognize that that label being misused in the wrong hands can be really powerful in a detrimental way as well. So, I feel like I could go on a really long tangent about that, but let's see. So, something else that I was thinking about with labels and language is that I'm sure that my lens has really been affected by where I've lived. So I was born in Louisiana, in South Louisiana, and my family is Cajun, and as of right now, doesn't really understand a lot about my queer process. They're very accepting of me and very loving, and I love Mel, and we don't talk about queer politics or politics in general, really. And then I spent the majority of my life actually living in the mountains of Western North Carolina, and so I recognize that my southern upbringing and southern surroundings have very much affected my need to kind of reinterpret things. So being queer in the South is something that I'm just starting to really look into as a particular thing, because I love both being queer identified and being Southern. I recognize that I have a lot of love for this region of the world, and it's a complicated, problematic relationship, and I love it. So as misunderstandings have come up, I have really seen the need to take those moments as educational moments and, again, redefine what people think is okay and say, I can be Cajun and Pakistani, my father's Pakistani, and be queer and be from the South. And I can be all these things, and I exist, basically. I'm trying to say that I exist, that queer does not look white or skinny or all of these certain things that I think a lot of times come up in LGBTQ conversations, kind of leave out other people. So, okay, getting a little tangential there, but I definitely feel the need to reinvent these labels and to take moments to kind of deepen the conversation with people as I can. And that it's definitely been something that I'm working on in my personal life all over the place, and I'm having to do it. I've talked about this a little bit before, but my queer process and my ethnic identity process have been very linked to each other. And I do see them as being very linked because I do see oppression as all being linked. And I don't think it's possible for someone to be to have racist tendencies but be completely accepting of queer folk. I think it all kind of goes together. And so I, again, being brown because my father's Pakistani and living in the South, in small towns, have had to say, hey, I exist and I can be a new concept of normal and it's okay for me to be who I am. And I've had to create space for myself as a brown person. And I know in conversations that I've had recently at my workplace, a community college in Western North Carolina, there were some focus groups happening on, how do we broaden our workforce to include more people of color? And I was invited to be a part of that focus group, and we're talking about people of color in the workplace and people of color in Asheville and that kind of thing. And I brought up my queer identity, and I was told, this is really a conversation about people of color. And I said, they're not separate from me. I can't separate those two things because being a queer person and experiencing prejudice because of that is not different for me than being a brown person and experiencing that. So these labels of saying, what's a queer issue versus a person of color issue, I don't separate them. And so I know that definitely shapes my lens on how I talk about myself and how I talk about my relationship. So something I actually wanted to share from tonight, a happy story, is that kind of perfect timing with this whole language and label conversation. So we are staying with Mel's parents, and Mel has been out to their mom and their stepdad for a while now, but as far as being out as trans, and came out to their little brother about being queer when we first got together, so a few years ago, but has not come out as trans to their little brother until tonight. And what was so great was the conversation went kind of like, Mel said, so, hey, what if I told you I don't really feel like a girl? And their little brother said, okay, what do you mean? And Mel said, well, what if I told you I feel like a guy? And their little brother said, okay, do whatever you gotta do. And that was it. And that was the end of it. And that is actually kind of how their conversation about coming out as queer went as well. And Mel was super excited about that and super happy that there wasn't a huge conversation with lots of flowery language and having to explain things. And that felt really good for their personal relationship. So I just wanted to share that excitement. And I know for me, with all of my wordiness, would like a bigger conversation, but for Mel that was really exactly what they wanted, so that was really happy. So yeah, so there's that. I have lots and lots of thoughts about language and labels, and it's a little scattered right now, but feel free to send me a message if there's anything you wanted to talk about, or comment below. And anyway, I'll be reporting from the road next week as well, so hope you all have a great week. Bye.